Picture it, 1980s, 1990s, central Wisconsin. There I am, a child being raised by two dairy farmers. My life consisted of being outdoors, lots of cows. And the cows, it was really important that we had certain things happening with them to make sure we had the offspring, to have the milk, to maintain the farm. So a lot of my sex and gender stuff that I learned throughout my life was on the farm. I grew up in a predominantly white, cisgender, heterosexual, able-bodied, physically labor-driven community that was actually 13 miles outside of the nearest city. I was assigned female at birth, which means when a baby is born, they look at the baby, the external reproductive organs, and they say, that kind of looks like a penis, a vagina, combination, or neither. And I was not expected to be who I was. When my doctor shared that I was not a baby with a penis, my mother was quite surprised. She wasn't prepared for me. She didn't have a name for me. So she took some time, she made a very nice name. She created a name and did a non-traditional spelling of it. She wanted me to be special, which is very nice of her. The spelling of that name is not too far off from what my current name is, which was confusing for a lot of medical and dental folks because they'd come out with that name in their heads and then they'd see me. And I liked to wear some boys' clothes. I liked to watch sports, talk about sports, read about sports, all of those things. And so then they had changed the pronunciation of my name, much to my mother's chagrin, and they had called me Ivan or Evan. I quickly learned that it was me, and I was excited because it felt good. It meant that they weren't seeing me as the assigned female at birth. This was great for me. My mother didn't always appreciate it, though. While I was growing up, I actually went to the dentist quite a few times because despite what my sister might have said about my mouth and personality, I have a small mouth. When my adult teeth came in, I had to have a lot of my baby teeth pulled, so I was there regularly. I marked this time, they gave me little treasure chests, plastic treasure chests to put the teeth in. I marked my time with that. And I also always got a reward for being brave. Now, I didn't realize it was an option not to be brave, but I went along with it. In this reward box, they had great things like books and cars and toys and pencils, erasers, all those kinds of things. It was really exciting for me. Those were the two biggest pieces. Every appointment, they'd have me come in and they'd do their work, take out whatever teeth they needed to, then they'd put a pause on it, give me a magazine, and wait for my mother to come in to tell her what had happened. One day I noticed on my paper chart in big red letters, girl, but like sports magazines. At the time, I was happy because that meant I didn't have to read the teen magazine, the dating tips, makeup tips, all that stuff. I was happy. But looking back on it, why can't everyone read sports magazines? So they got that figured out. And then one time when I had my teeth pulled, I went to the reward box and I was super excited. I saw this red car. It was a little plastic red car. It had little wheels that you could pop the tires off of and put them back on. It was super neat. But I don't think I knew it was gender at the time, but I knew if I took that car, someone was going to say something. So I decided to take a book instead, and I told myself that if it was there the next time, I was taking the car. So the next time comes, I'm not thinking about this car. I look into the box, and the car is there. I'm so excited, I forget about my numb mouth, and I just reach for this car. As I reached for it, the hygienist paused me and said, "What about this?" And it was a doll, and I said, "No, I want the car." So I took the car. I was really excited about it, and when my mom came back, that was the first thing they told her, was that I took a car out of the reward box. My mom kind of looked at me and asked if I'd had all the books in the reward box, and I didn't, but I wanted the car, so I said I did. And she chose her battles with gender and just let me have the car. I was super excited, but the significant part is they talked about the car that I picked out of a reward box before talking about the two significant teeth that had roots on them, full roots, like they were solid, and a third one that had a partial root. I remember this because I also am science medical. I like that sort of stuff. And they were super cool because the cow's teeth never had roots on them. So I remember that I was about 9 to 11 years old, somewhere in there. So we're right at the 1980s, 1990s, right? I was going home in the car, so excited. I was able to take the tires on and off. And I know that I was 9 to 11 because I was still young enough that I could take my shirt off in the back seat. I was allowed to do that. As I got older and puberty started, my world changed. I went from being one of the boys, playing sports, being one of the first ones picked for teams because I was good at sports, to all of a sudden now all the boys were pointing, touching, looking, and commenting on my chest that I didn't think I should have. It was no longer about how far I could hit the ball, kick the ball, throw the ball. All of a sudden there was something else happening. This was a really difficult transition for me, and it's not an uncommon transition point or a gender recognition point for a lot of people. For me, my gender was always present all the way back. For some folks, it is. For some folks, it isn't. For other folks, it might change, kind of like how we change our clothes from different setting to different setting, or different day to different day, depending on our moods. Gender can be fluid like that. But for me, my body was saying that, or was portraying me as someone that I really wasn't. So I looked down and I was sad about what was happening with my body, and all the people around me were telling me that I couldn't do the things that I wanted to do. I could no longer be in certain spaces. I had to do other things, and it really created some significant depressive stuff. I now know, when I look back on it, I responded in the way that many, many people respond. It wasn't because I was too sensitive. It wasn't because I wasn't tough. It was because I was not fitting what the majority world was saying that I needed to be. And that extra pressure often comes out as mental health, physical health concerns. Minority stress theory is a theory that you can apply to this situation as well as other intersectional identities. So when we think about gender-related things, a lot of times we think about how things don't work out. We think about how things do work out, but they aren't necessarily the common images. So the overwhelming majority of folks are healthy, happy, well-adjusted individuals, and likely you have all shared bathrooms and other places with them and didn't know it. But for those of us who didn't have the same types of support, the road is a little bit harder. Trevor Project in 2022 did a survey, and they found that 40% of trans individuals attempted to die by suicide in 2022, compared to 4% of cisgender peers, 10 times as great. They also found that 70% of trans individuals have thoughts about dying by suicide in their lifetime. That's 7 to 8 times higher than cisgender peers. And it doesn't stop with mental health pieces. Physical assaults, danger, abuse, murder, they're all on the table, specifically when we start to look at more intersections. There have been 186 trans women murdered in the world as of today. Well, as of last week, so the number's probably higher, and we don't have good reporting avenues, so that number's likely higher, especially because it said that there were only 26 in the United States, and I know there's more than that. This is especially scary when we start to look at trans women of color. Specifically, they are disproportionately represented in abuse, assault, and murder situations. So I want to take you on a little journey. We have these statistics. Statistics aren't people. But take a moment, if you will. Here I am. I'm a human. What were your first impressions of me? What did you think? Should I have a tie or not have a tie? I actually asked if I should. Should I be in pants? Should I be in a dress? What bathroom should I be in? What about my voice? Does it fit? Is it too high, too low? Am I moving awkwardly? Do I look like I could threaten your family? What bathroom should I be in? Do I sit to pee? What body parts do I have? Those are all questions that come to mind for a lot of folks in just a snap of fingers, because we all like things to fit into a neat little box so that we can say, this is what's happening. These questions and the fear underneath them is actually what's driving a lot of the anti-trans legislation in the United States today. There's been 30 different states in 2023 who have introduced anti-trans legislation. That legislation is to ban drag performances, it's to ban certain language in certain K-12 school settings, and it's denying access to gender-affirming care for different folks. As scary as these things are, and I know they're building up to come after me, we've been here before. If we go back to the 1900s to about the 1960s, in the United States, it was illegal for you to have more than one article of clothing on that belonged to a different sex assigned at birth. And who got to figure out whether or not you were wearing the right clothes? It was police and your neighbors. We also have a history of silencing. We have Don't Ask, Don't Tell that came into play in the 1990s. It was specifically designed to say, LGBTQIA plus people, don't say anything. Don't tell us who you are, don't tell us about your family's relationships, any of those pieces, and you can stay in the military. There were a lot of people who were discharged around that time for a variety of different reasons, and it depended on where you were in the military, whether or not that was a big deal. That was rescinded in 2010, and the significance of the military doing that, the military is actually the #1 employer of trans, non-binary, gender expansive folks. So this is really significant stuff that we're talking about. And if you want to know a little bit more about how this is all going to impact trans folks, please take a moment and look up the Lavender Scare from the 1950s. It's some great history, and it really goes into how employment and financial stability is going to be impacted. So we have all these pieces coming together. All of these things happening. What can we do about it? That's why I'm here to talk with you a little bit more. There's going to be some people who are not going to be able to do all the same things that other people are going to be able to do because of external pressures, community pressures, or other pieces. The culture has to come from the top, and it needs to permeate all the way down. It needs to go all the way through to the front desk staff. So if you can create that culture in your business, you're going to make so many more folks seen, and so many folks are going to come back. Now, when I say permeate all the way to the front desk, things like in your electronic health records, can you put pronouns in there? Then you don't take a risk. If the front desk can see those, you don't take a risk of potentially misgendering someone. What about names? We already do this for Johnny and Jimmy and Joey and Jenny. Why can't we just do name used? And then have everyone put their name in there. It's including everyone, and it'll be really helpful. If you're going to have transgender identity in your medical records, please include cisgender also. And I say that because if you only do transgender, you're othering trans folks. These two words go together. If we're looking for one, let's track the other one too. There's lots of other pieces that can come into play when we're speaking about trans health related things. Some of the smaller things that we can do, art, books, magazines, those are pieces you're going to be able to slide into spaces, and they're not going to be as visible, but to the folks who know about them, it's going to mean the world. What about pronouns? Again, how do you introduce yourself? Can you introduce yourself every time with your pronouns? It sounds a little awkward, but just like everything, we get used to it. Hi, I'm Evan. I use he or they pronouns. Can you tell me a little bit about you? You get used to it. And for the folks who don't need to hear that, you might make a couple of cisgender folks frustrated because you're giving pronouns. They don't have to be involved in it if they don't want to. But for the folks who hear you say that, you open a door of safety. And when you open that door of safety, you're going to invite in a lot of other health concerns. When we're talking about some other specific things, when you're going through and doing your day-to-day pieces and you're working with clients, the hand mirror was always interesting to me. Make sure you get consent for that, because if you bring the hand mirror in, for some folks, facial hair is going to be really triggering. Lack of facial hair can be really triggering as well. So we just want to ask consent, which you're already doing, and just continue to do it. That's not necessarily trans-specific, but that's gender-affirming and trauma-informed, that consent piece. Another piece that isn't actually related to LGBTQIA community at all is sexual health. Are you asking about sexual health? We know that oral health is impacted by sexual health. We know that there are certain things you can see, that you can tell, that you can help work on or coach folks on to help them be safe as they're being sexually healthy human beings. Is it possible to have dental dams or condoms out? If you can't have them out, well, maybe you can put them in a space so that folks know they can access them, and then they can ask for them, or they can easily take them without feeling too seen or too uncomfortable about it. These are all pieces that build up. And one of the pieces is that we put pressure on ourselves. I don't have to know everything, and I don't. And that's okay. We don't have to know everything, but we do have to be able to say, sometimes, because of those automatic thoughts, I'm going to inadvertently make a mistake. I'm not going to mean to, but when I make one of those mistakes, it's like a paper cut. One paper cut, no big deal. Multiple paper cuts, whether it's in your office or whether it's throughout this person's day, you have a really big wound, and it's gonna hurt, and we need to tend to that. So if someone says, hey, that wasn't okay, or corrects you on something, please say thank you. Please don't go into how hard you're trying and what you're doing. I know that, but when you tell me that after you mess up my name, I have to comfort you and tell you it's actually okay when it's not. If you don't understand, like if I correct you on something and you're like, I don't understand that, thank me. Go talk with one of your peers who's not in the community and find out what could go different next time. It's really difficult when we don't understand and we want to understand. It's a tendency to try and dive into that person to try and get more information. If we think about, I'm outside with any one of you and we're playing catch. We're throwing a ball back and forth, right? If I throw the ball and I throw it through a window, I didn't mean to, but the broken window is my responsibility. The broken window, I can deny that I did it, but when I walk over to my ball and it's surrounded in glass, everyone can see that. The challenge is when we walk over to the ball, we don't always see the glass. We don't always see the impact, and our tendency can be to use our own experiences in order to try to see the glass that we can't see at all. So trust other people. If they say there's glass around the ball, you might have made an impact there. One of the other pieces that's important is cultural humility. I know that some of the things that I've said today might be later today not correct, or tomorrow, next week, next year, 10 years from now, whatever it is. When I make a mistake, in the words of Maya Angelou, when we know better, we do better. And I think that's a good way to follow it. So I want to wrap up with one thought for all of you. If and when you are in your offices, consider the fact any gender might like to read sports magazines, and any gender might really want that little red car. Thank you.